a dealer will bring in one of our trainers, and we have several of them in all different departments, and they think they need help with closing. And the reality is they need help with opening. They don't need help. They want a tricky, fancy closing, cheesy sales guy line, and we got to get better closing. I'm like, well, the best close in the world is be a better opener.
Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com, where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
What's up, One Gang? This one's a little different and will be lots of fun. Today we sit down with Sam Dantzler, founder of Garage Composites, educator, speaker, and one of the most experienced voices in the powersports industry. But beyond the title, Sam's someone who has spent decades inside dealerships, inside 20 groups, and inside the real conversations that shape how this industry operates. He's worked with hundreds of dealers, major OEMs, and leadership teams across North America, helping them understand one simple truth: your numbers don't lie, but most people don't know how to read them. From growing up in Florida to building multiple platforms like Sam's Powersports Garage and Wheelhouse College, Sam has made a career out of helping people move from guessing to understanding to executing. And today we're diving into all of it: the industry, the mistakes, the opportunities, and what separates the dealers who win from the ones who don't. Welcome to the podcast, Sam. We're excited to have you, and we've had fun talking with you off air already, man.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be here. I look forward to this.
Yeah, this is great, man. Sam and I got a chance to meet first time at the NPDA in Ohio, and we hit it off. I heard his speech, and he mentioned Iron Maiden. So I wore my Iron Maiden hat to, since I'm a diehard Iron Maiden guy myself. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Sam, we're going to start off with Break the Ice section. 10 rapid fire questions, then we'll get into the journey. You ready to go?
Yeah, hit it.
First album or song that got you hooked on hard rock or heavy metal?
Ooh, it would have been one of the Queensryche songs, and it was off of the Warning album. After that, I rolled into all of the Maiden ensemble. So
nice. So
Queensryche, that world, that era, Queensryche was
Queensryche kicked it off for you. Okay, that's cool. Favorite Iron Maiden song? No overthinking. First one that comes to mind.
Wasted Years.
Wasted Years.
It's such a good message, right? Don't waste your time searching for those wasted years. I love it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to say mine would be probably Hallowed Be Thy Name.
My second favorite on the list, right? I'll tell you what, though, I really love these songs that get into the history, that like Alexander the Great in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and a lot of people just don't know that about Iron Maiden at all. So
lyrically, they're probably the best heavy metal band of all time.
It's incredible,
yeah. Mount Rushmore for heavy metal bands.
Mount Rushmore. What is Mount Rushmore of all heavy metal bands?
What is your Mount Rushmore? Yeah, the four bands that you would put onto the Mount Rushmore.
Well, Maiden,
it's an old hair metal band. You might not have heard of them.
and if you say White Lion, this podcast is over.
Well, I won't say Warrant or Winger. How about that?
There you go.
No, I'd say Maiden's up there. Queensryche, just from the history, and I just think I think the
Operation Mindcrime.
Operation Mindcrime is one of the best albums ever.
Top
produced.
3 ever, 100%.
And I'd probably put Megadeth up there as well.
Nice.
And early Metallica, right up until the Black Album.
Master of Puppets. Okay, nice.
Yeah,
nice. That's a good. That's a good selection. All right,
a good lineup. You can't go wrong with any of that.
None at all. All right, this is a funny one. Who's truly the brains of the operation at Garage Composites? You or Tony?
Neither. I would say Glow and Jolene.
Team. All right. Nice.
No, the interesting story there. We can revisit that later. There's more to that story.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that for sure. Build me your dream garage. 1 car or truck and 1 motorcycle.
Well, I would immediately sell the car or truck to get another motorcycle, no matter what it was.
Give me 2 motorcycles.
I would say the MV Agusta Super Veloce 1000.
That's a beautiful bike, man.
Which is an insanely gorgeous motorcycle. And I would probably say, you guys had Neil Noble on, a buddy of mine, and he was talking about his Springer front end, and you know, he and Adam Smith worked together forever. And so Adam had a bike that was in my garage for 2 years, which was also a Crossbones that was all customized. So I just absolutely love the look of the Crossbones in the field.
Killer. Good choices, brother. Good choices. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who are you breaking bread with?
Nikola Tesla. He's
Oh,
responsible for every gadget we use today in today's modern era. I think that guy was
very
absolutely
cool.
brilliant and born, back in the 1780s to
Mhm.
18 something 40s, and he's moving rocks around in Colorado Springs just by pushing them. 4-ton rocks. He figured out polarity and all that kind of stuff. I find that guy to be fascinating.
Absolutely. All right. First motorcycle you ever owned?
1976 Suzuki GS550L.
GS 550,
And it was a POS, and I didn't know what I was doing, man. The brakes would squeak, and I would spray WD-40 on them because I didn't know, right?
Yeah, spraying WD-40 on
That's so
brakes.
funny, man.
I had a buddy
right.
in college who was into bikes, and he's the guy. He's like, "Let's just find you one, and then we'll put it back together." And so we souped it up, paint job, all the kind of stuff. So
A good
that
way
was
to
the
do
first
it.
one. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. One thing people think they know about you that's completely wrong.
they think I'm an extrovert. I love doing stuff alone. I'm a closet introvert because they see me giving a speech or something like that. And
Right.
in that moment, I absolutely am. I love it. And then I want to check out of the world. Like I always heard introvert, extrovert. Like, where do you go to recharge? Do you go around people or do you go by yourself? And I go by myself to recharge. So
I do the
That's cool.
same. My wife calls me an introverted extrovert.
yeah, there you go. Same idea. You see my cup up here, fellas?
Seventh son of the seventh son, kids. He's showing.
Yeah.
That's a very
Mhm.
probably the best top to bottom Maiden album of all time.
I concur.
All right. Last one. If there is one thing almost all dealers get wrong or don't do correctly, what would that be?
Holy moly. You think you sell motorcycles. You don't.
Mm.
You sell experiences that happen to contain a motorcycle. That's what it is. That's the biggest problem in the industry with salespeople. They think they sell a widget, and if I just learn all the product knowledge, I'll be a great salesperson. Has nothing to do with it, truly.
Yep.
Great
You know,
point.
you sit here and you think about how is it possible that you can hire a brand new salesperson and scared to death, they sell a boat or a motorcycle right out of the gate on the first day or week that they're there. How do they do it?
Right.
Because they're scared to talk about it. So they spend all their time talking to the person about the person because they're genuinely scared to talk about the thing because they don't know anything about it. And it just proves the point that it's not about you vomiting product knowledge. It's about you engaging another human being and sharing an experience in a moment with them. That's
a
why
great
I
point.
said that earlier answer.
That's such a good point.
And you know what's amazing that you said that? And we're going to get into this in a second, but it's funny that you said that because we had a couple of guests that are like yourself. They have so much industry experience. I mean, they started out in this and bred this thing for 30 years. And they all have said the same thing when similar questions have come up. And that the first thing is like, when I started in sales, and this is what they say, when I started in sales, I was raw. So I really didn't know what I was talking about. So
Yeah.
my first thing was like, you got a minute to you got about 60 seconds to attract somebody. And what's the best way to attract them? But ask them about them. Let me see how they're doing, who they are. Where do you live? Oh, great. And always bringing them into this conversation eases them up from feeling like they're being sold. And it's exactly what you said. When you're green, you talk about just normal, and then you have a connection. When you're so focused with data, you're just spitting, throwing up data at this person. They're going like, I know, I've done my research. That's why I'm here.
Well, and that, to your point, every single piece of that data is online. They come in armed with as much of that as they choose to
100%.
go educate themselves on. So why are you just going to give it to them again? They already know that. That's not what they're here for. I always go back to the girl at the bar. It's the easiest scenario in the world. When you talk about relationships or dating or call it whatever you want, I just call it the girl at the bar, right? What is your intent with going to talk to the girl at the bar? And I got to be careful because sometimes in like in a public speech, you get some answers that are yelled out that you're like, okay, tell that. What is your intent with the girl? Let's just say to continue the relationship, right? Whatever definition you want to have with that. What are you going to talk to her about? Are you going to talk to her about what you're trying to sell her? Or are you going to ask her a million questions about her? It's so obvious, and we do it in relationships, and people don't get that transfer into the world of selling. It's not the thing you want them to buy. It is all about them. They are the decision maker. They're what's for sale, not the widget. The decision coming out of their mouth is what's for sale.
And to take it a step further, it's what are they going to do with that widget? You put them in that mental space where, hey, you're looking at this KTM. Where are you going to ride it? What are you thinking about?
This
What
is
kind
going
of
to be a
riding are you
fun
gonna
show,
do?
man.
But
We're going to
it's
have
like, yeah, it's like, well, what's the vision? I've always, and I don't know who told it to me. It might have been my grandpa, who is a huge influence in my life. There's a picture that everybody has. They want to buy something that's completely irrational and illogical, be it a boat or a motorcycle. There's a picture of their life with that in it. The more clarity the salesperson can pull forth from what that picture looks like, the easier it is to set the table for them as to how this one unit solves that picture or that
Right.
problem or that dream you have. It shocks me that the profession of sales is the highest paid profession in the world and also the lowest paid
And the
profession
lowest, yes, sir.
on the
Yeah.
same thing, because
Yeah.
one person thinks he sells a motorcycle and the other guy thinks he sells you dragging a knee around a turn at Laguna Seca, and this motorcycle happens to do that for you. So
That's right.
it's just a matter of getting the idea of what it is that person wants it for, to Ben's point.
Exactly right. All right, man. Hey, you successfully completed the break the ice round. Congratulations.
Awesome. Awesome.
Confetti.
You have a prize coming, so keep a lookout for it.
Hey, Serge, just from our Maiden talk, I knew you were going to say something about heavy metal. And I told you I had a piece of paper sitting here in front of me. And other than the cup, I have one more thing sitting here in front of me. And I want to share this with you. Because
100%.
like, this is our logo behind me where we do our podcast. And directly across from where I'm sitting is a bookshelf where this sits.
Sweet, man.
Yeah. Well, what's it called?
This is Ed Force One.
Ed Force One. That's it.
This is the plane that flies those guys around, right? This is
and
the
great
actual
part
plane.
is the singer Bruce Dickinson actually flies that plane, which is
He
the
is the
baddest of
pilot.
all, man.
Yeah,
Yep.
that is such a
One,
cool
one
part.
time for my birthday, my wife said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I want you to watch this movie with me. And it was Iron Maiden 666, right?
Yeah,
If
that
you
was a
remember
great
that
one.
movie, well,
Of course.
I don't know, 06, 07, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so the idea was these guys always wanted to go, the band always wanted to get to these countries that they could never go to because they were too big and these planes couldn't get in. And Bruce said, what if I fly the plane and we put all the band members and all the equipment in the one plane? We will go there and do all these shows in all these different countries. And the average age of a Maiden fan went down to 19 years old that year. Because
Wow.
all of us were bringing our kids to see
That's right.
Maiden. And
That's
they got
right.
a whole new generation involved. So just a pretty cool plane and a cool story of my wife falling in love with the band as well at that time.
Man, it was amazing. The last time they were down in with the Panthers play, I went to see them. This was a few years back, and it was great to see because, like you were saying, it's guys our ages, right, with their kids now.
That's
so
right.
you see all these kids wearing Maiden t-shirts, rocking out. I mean, I was like, this is awesome, man. That's just the type of band that is. That music, that whole genre. I mean, it's like, I don't think it ever dies. It's ageless in my opinion. I mean, that music is still great 40 years down the road. I went to see Scorpions play and I'm like, my goodness, I've seen them 15, 16 times. First time when I was like 14 and I'm like, holy smoke. I took my son to it. And even he was like, wow, they're really good still. And they're old.
Yeah, they're still amazing. And what is it? Klaus Main, his voice is still spot on.
Still sick.
All right, I'm done talking about metal. I know our listeners are like, what are we doing here?
I know, this isn't a metal show.
That's right.
It is today. All right, Sam, let's get into the journey. Florida man, take us back into growing up down here on the lake. What kind of kid were you? What were you into?
I grew up in Odessa, Florida, which is just north of Tampa, just outside of Lutz. We grew up water skiing, which is why we play in the marine industry today. And I grew up longing for a motorcycle because I was never, ever allowed to have one. My dad was a newscaster. He was on the 6 o'clock evening news for the CBS affiliate for 20 years of my life. Wow. And so then when I saw the movie Anchorman, I'm like, that was my dad back in the day. Because he was older when he was 46 years old when I was born, right? So I just had this vision of my dad being that guy. He was never the younger guy. But
did he have a mustache?
He did not have a mustache. He did a full beard, but he did not have the Ron Burgundy stash. No,
not that Burgundy shoot.
But he was always good about when he came home. That was time for the boys. It was just me with my brother Dan, and he'd go out in the yard and throw the football with us, and we'd go out in the boat all the time. So we were water skiing as kids back then. But my mom was very protective of his image as the newscaster. He was known all over the Tampa Bay area, and every time we went to go eat somewhere, it was, oh, hey, there's Ray Dantzler, and people would come up to him all the time, and we were just the kids of Ray Dantzler, and so he was my mom was protective of his image. And you think about who was riding motorcycles in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up as a kid.
Right.
And it was hoodlums and thugs and hooligans. And my mom was like, no way. And I'm like, well, that's why I want one. I want to be a hooligan and a thug. And
Yeah.
So
at what point did motorcycles creep in?
1976 Suzuki GS 550L in college. I was never allowed to have a motorcycle or a tattoo. And the first day of college, I had both.
Yes.
Wow.
And that has backfired tremendously on my mom.
Oh, man.
That's so funny, man. So tattoos weren't allowed, motorcycles weren't allowed for protection. And you get into
it wasn't safety at all. It was protection of my dad's image. It was an image thing for my mom.
Got it. Amazing.
I think most parents think these things are dangerous and I don't want to have my kid on it, or at least that's the answer I hear from other parents not named Sam and Brandy. But it's to protect an image was just a very interesting thing. And my mom was very protective of my dad. So I couldn't have either one of those until I got to college, and I have had a bunch of both.
I gotcha. Funny, man. How did it play out once you did get to college? What were you studying? What was your major at FSU? And was it keg tapping or what?
All right. So I had to transfer into Florida State because I didn't have the grades to get into Florida State. That's where I wanted to go because they had a football team. My dad went to Florida. My mom went to Florida State. I didn't care. I wanted into one of those two schools, and I couldn't get in. So I had to transfer in. And back then you could transfer into Florida State with a 2.5, if you can believe that, GPA.
Well, you and I so much alike, man.
And I was just hanging out in college. I was just like, no, I just want to be in, I just want to ride motorcycles, and Florida State has the only collegiate circus in the country, and I joined the circus, and because all of the cheerleaders from high school were in the circus, and I'm like, why would I not be in the circus? So
dude, that's so funny.
It was just circus and motorcycles, and then fraternity, and then somewhere along the line, a counselor pulled me in, and she's like, you got to do something here. You got to pick a major to get to your question. I'm like, I don't know. You pick for me. So she picked interdisciplinary studies, which was just a big, broad topic where you could take a bunch of little things underneath it. And because I had to get out in 2 years, my parents paid for the first 2 years of school, and that came quickly. And so student loans and credit cards came after that. And I was like, all right, I better get out in 5,
right?
Not 7. So my major really had nothing to do with what I was going to do long term. Motorcycles and circus had everything to do with what I was going to do long term. So
that's too bad that wasn't a major, bro. You'd be a dean.
What's that? Motorcycles and circus?
Chasing girls to circus and motorcycles.
That's right.
You'd be the dean of the school, man.
Which begs the question: why isn't motorcycle power sport ownership operations a major at some school somewhere? Right.
I think they did do it on I studied business management, and that's how they did it. And I did my story when I was in college for a paper. I did it on a Powersports dealership because I love motorcycles. I never worked at one as a kid, but I just loved it and I did it. But I say the same thing. It would be cool if it was kind of taught a little bit more, maybe be a lot more interest for people coming out.
Well, that led to a lot of what we currently do now, which was all the general manager training and stuff that we do. There is no school out there, and I've tried to work with the state of Colorado to get accreditation for our academy to be an actual college, and the hoops you have to jump through it's absolutely insane. So we just keep plugging along on the level that we're playing.
Your bike turns heads. Your gear should too. Milwaukee Motorcycle Clothing Company has classic leathers and bold new designs you won't find anywhere else. Shop top brands plus exclusive MMCC originals. Right now, our listeners get 20% off their entire order with promo code CW20. Visit MilwaukeeMotorcycleClothing.com today.
Yeah, that's a story we've heard plenty. So you're at Florida State, then you graduate. Walk us into the early part of your career. How'd you get into the power sports world? You know, was it a natural progression? Did you just go straight from it? Was it the only thing in your mind? And what were those first industry roles like for you?
Power sports didn't come up until 2000 as a career. As a job, as anything. There was a chapter, and I graduated December of 93, and in that window of time, I went out and Well, there were a lot of things that happened. Number one, I wanted to be a ski bum out in Vail. So I did that. I did that for a couple of years. That was an amazing time in my life. And I met somebody that I would end up working for as a computer consulting recruiter for a while. I had done retail my whole life as a side job when I was a kid. My dad was a Navy man. So when I was a kid, I would spend my summers at dive shops working retail. So I understood retails and retail forever.
Yeah.
And I was juggling dive knives in the stores in front of little kids, and parents were like, get away from that guy. And then I just thought, hey, I'm gonna really try to pursue this thing. So this thing being Circus. So I was a juggler at Disney World and Universal Studios. I was a sword fighter at King Henry's Feast down in Orlando, Florida.
No kidding.
I did a bunch of work on cruise ships for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines for a while. So yeah, I loved every bit of it, but I didn't love being on a cruise ship. It sounds fun for a while, but then at some point you're like, I need to put some roots down and get on with my life or something like that. So I ended up with a company called the Friedman. Oh, you had a question.
I was going to say, how old were you at this point when you were working on the cruise ships?
This is in my 20s. This is my mid to late 20s. And on the backside of it in 99, I ended up going back to Colorado because I loved it so much. I'm like, I just got to go live in Colorado and figure it out from there. So I moved there. I ended up at the Friedman Group, which is a retail sales training company. Because I'd done sales my whole life. And I was like, I'm going to go work for Harry Friedman at the time. And one of the guys that worked for Harry Friedman said, there's a guy here by the name of Ed Lemko, and he lives in Colorado. And he does exactly what we do in one industry called the motorcycle industry. And you seem to be so obsessed with motorcycles. I think you should go talk to him. This is a guy I worked for at the Friedman Group. So I did my homework, and I went to Ed's office, Ed Lemko, who was my mentor in this industry. And I walked in and I said, Ed, you don't know me. You've never heard of me, but I need to work for you. I'm supposed to be here. I don't care what you pay me. I don't care what you call me. I'm supposed to work for you.
This is
so
meant to happen.
When can we get this thing started? And he liked that answer. And so he brought me on, and I started with Ed Lemko in 2000. And that was the launch of the 20 Club motorcycle training world for me. That's the professional crossing of the threshold, if you will, Ben.
Speaking of the 20 group, you spent years in that 20 group world, RPM, Lemko, working with OEMs.
Yeah.
What did that experience teach you personally, especially at that young part of your career, about dealerships, how they actually operate the day-to-day in the life of?
Well, number one, it started me thinking about why does it seem so hard that these people come in wanting these amazing toys, but so many of them leave without it? Like, what's the disconnect? Something's not happening. They're coming in wanting it so badly and they leave without it. So it made me want to study psychology, which was another chapter that came later. But it was very apparent because Ed Lemko was of the mindset that we are dealer advocates first. That was the mindset of Lemko. We are dealer advocates, be damned the manufacturer. That was his philosophy. Right. Yeah. And it's no wonder why manufacturers did not like Ed Lemko, because the dealers were writing a check for the consulting services and how to get better. And Ed was saying, stop taking everything the dealer's trying to shove down your throat. So that immediately started the rift. And really, to answer your question, it was very apparent that there's a huge disconnect between dealers and manufacturers, right? We're all supposed to be on the same page. Every manufacturer says we're partners in this. Few of them act like partners in this. And the ones that do, it is very obvious who acts like a partner and who does not act like a partner. So I started thinking about, like, how do you fix that issue right there? It seems like every dealer had that issue going on with one of the manufacturers they had in their stores. But I knew right away, I was set on, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be with Ed. I'm supposed to be under his umbrella for as long as he's going to stay in this industry, and I'm going to soak up everything I can from this guy, and then I'm going to try to figure the rest out on my own. Because I told everybody I knew, I'm like, well, this is where I'm going to be forever, right here with Ed Lemko. And it wasn't too long after that he wanted to retire. And so in 2004, with the help of Mark Tack and Bill Coulter, who they're the owners of Ride Now Powersports, and they had all their guys on management academies and everything. And Ed was looking to sell the company to NCM, an automotive 20 Club provider. And the idea was, well, hang on. What if if you and Bill cut the check for me, because God knows I don't have the money, let's the three of us buy out Ed Lemko right now, and I'll run this thing. And that's exactly what happened back in April of 2004.
That's wild. That's cool. You had that direction. That sense of direction.
Well, it was kind of like, what are we gonna do? I can't lose this job. Like, I can't go
Right.
back to
I
being
like this job.
being a carny.
All right. So for our listeners and people who aren't our viewers, listeners that aren't familiar with it,
Yes.
give us an idea of what a 20 group is. There are plenty of other names for them in other industries and concepts, but tell us about 20 groups in our industry.
A 20 group, or a 20 club, as we call them. 20 groups came out of the automotive world. It originally came out of optometry, right? So a bunch of eyeglass dealers got together, and somebody doing the book says, you're charging this much for a visit and you're charging this much. Why don't we get together and figure out what we all should be charging? So it was a sharing of best practices that evolved through the automotive industry. And Ed was the first guy to ever put it into the powersport industry in 1981 with K1, which was the first 20 club or 20 group in the powersports. Was Kawasaki One, sponsored by Kawasaki.
Wow.
Man.
So that was pretty cool. He also wrote a book at that time called Making It Easy to Buy, that if you just make it easy enough for someone to say yes in an industry they're obsessed with, they're going to say yes anyhow, which I thought was a brilliant, easy way to look at things. So we get people together, up to 20 non-competing dealers in a room, call it whatever you want, peer review, performance group. That's what Harley calls them. Sharing of best practices while looking at that dealer's data. So we're looking at the data in a composite, which is where Garage Composites gets its name from. Everything cool happens in a garage, and we track it through a composite. That's where that logo came from, other than the dog sitting there behind me. That's a different story. But we take those best practices, and the idea is that collectively the group gets stronger, right? So once we figure that piece out, then we figure out, how do you train the managers underneath it? So the Management Training Academy came underneath the 20 clubs, 20 Club Primary Business Managers Training Academy coming underneath it. And then you get individual speeches where you're dealing with industry partners that are out there, like NPDA and MIC and companies like that. And then we do in dealership work as a result of it. So it all trickles down from the best practices, the current best practices as unearthed inside these 20 clubs. They meet 3 times a year as a group, all of our groups. We have over 400 dealers that report to us, and 35 groups I think we have that meet 3 times a year. And then from those best practices, we tweak and change our management academies, and then we do in dealership training and public speaking and stuff like that.
Right on.
What gives a dealership, like, what does a dealership have to do, or what kind of requirements does it have to meet to make that 20 group?
To be in one of our groups, you can't be an independent dealer, as in you can't be I use the word franchise. It's not the right word, but we say you have to carry a franchise brand. You have to carry a Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha. You have to carry one of those major brands. You can't just be a used bike superstore, because then your data doesn't relate to the guys that are having to deal with the manufacturers on a regular basis. So pass number 1 is, do you carry one of the major brands out there? And it's funny because those major brands are changing, right? CF Moto is now a major brand that's out there.
Major brand.
Some of these major brands that were major brands have fallen off. So yeah, and then we basically pair you up with like-minded people in the room. And I'll tell you, personality is the strongest trait that we're looking for as to what group to put you into, because a lot of people think, well, I'm 1,000 units or more, I only want to be in a high volume group. Well, the high volume dealer has just as much to learn about payroll and expense control from the low volume dealer as the low volume dealer has to understand how to chase every deal coming in the door that the high volume dealer understands, right? And so the cross-pollination of different levels of dealers in the room is really healthy and good, even though the dealers, and quite frankly, their egos, don't want that. They think they know exactly what kind of group they want, and some do. They've been doing it for 15, 20 years. They may know exactly what kind of group they want. So we try to individually place them in the right group for them, no matter what it is. And we have OEM-sponsored groups, and then we have private groups. There are a lot of manufacturers that want to see their dealers do better, and they will sponsor one of our groups. Yep. Which may seem to your listener counterintuitive to what I said earlier, that the dealer has to win, be damned the manufacturer. Because when I took over in 2004, the very first thing I did was wrote a letter to every manufacturer, the heads of state at every manufacturer. And I said, listen, I'm not Ed Lemko. We are still dealer advocates, but I think it's in conjunction with the manufacturer, not be damned the manufacturer. It has to be a partnership. That's when Michael Locke from Ducati called me, and we rolled into 4 private Ducati 20 clubs over the next 3 years when Michael Locke was at the helm. And so it just got traction after that. So now we have different manufacturers, both on the marine and the power sports side of the fence, that that are sponsoring these groups as well as our private groups.
That's sick.
All right, man, let's get into Garage Composites.
All right, let's do it.
How did you and Tony team up? What is it? And what problem were you trying to solve when you started it?
There's a
I'm
lot
interested
to
to
that.
find out how you and Tony hooked up first, man. That should be interesting.
Answer in 20 words or less.
Yeah, no way. How did Tony and Sam hook up in the first place? Well, Sam was dating a gal who's not my current wife, but she was a wine and liquor rep in the industry. And one of her coworkers was a guy named Darren Tanner, and she became friends with Darren Tanner, and Darren Tanner was friends with all of the Denver Fire Department guys. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I would go with this gal to some of these parties in the Denver Fire Department, and I hit it off with a ton of those guys, one of whom was Tony Gonzalez, one of whom was Jordan Schoolmeister, or Schoolie, who was also on our team as well.
That's right.
So I met Tony through the fire department when he was a career fire guy. We rode Harleys together forever. We chased girls together for a long time. We did triathlons together for a long time. And at some point, I'm just like, dude, why don't you come work for me? You do like the cushiest schedule I've ever seen. He had like 1 day of work at the fire department and 27 days off, or whatever that bullshit schedule is those guys do. Right?
And he's probably cringing when he hears this.
Sure. So are all the other guys I know are yelling at me through the speakers right now.
That's so funny.
But a lot of firefighters typically have a second side hustle going on, right? They're repair guys, or they're construction guys, or they're whatever, because they have time on the side to have the second job. And I said, Tony, come work for me, dude. Come be a sales guy. You're a total motorcycle enthusiast. I can teach you how to be one of our sales trainers. So that's what he did. So he came to work for me in 2000, it's either 2 or 2003, as a traveling sales guy, contract sales trainer. Right. And so we just hit it off, and he was doing a whole bunch of work. And so when this thing went south, this thing called Lemko at the time, that, to your point, you said, Serge, earlier, that it became the RPM group, because my thing was I need to change the name, but still honor Ed Lemko, who is one of my favorite figures out there. And rest in peace, Ed. He taught me. He was my business dad. I mean, my dad I loved to death, and he was my business dad. He taught me everything I knew about business. And so I wanted to honor him, but I think we needed to change the name, because Lemko just had a stigma about it that we needed to move from, while still trying to honor it. That's where RPM came from. One of our management programs was called the Retail Powersports Management Group. So we said, let's become RPMG and have a tachometer as a logo. That's when that logo came in. And there's a whole chapter in there about another company called Assurant, which is a third-party F&I provider that wanted to buy us to put their F&I products into the powersport industry. And they thought if they bought us, it'd be a good venue to push their product through.
How'd that go?
Turns out auto guys and motorcycle guys, if you hear us on the podcast bashing auto guys, believe me, there's experience behind it. Okay? It's not that they're bad guys, but they're selling a need, and it's a whole different sales process. So
that's right.
That thing unwound, and then Tony and I went our separate ways after that thing came apart in 2000, and I don't even remember when it was, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. And I was working to try to get the intellectual property back from Assurant. So I ended up buying that intellectual property, the Lemko RPMG intellectual property, and I had it in my hip pocket because I knew I was going to reboot this thing at some point. Tony and I were doing our own independent things and quite literally crossing in airports around the country. And I said, dude, let's put the band back together. And it was that simple. We went to the up near Red Rocks. There's a restaurant there called the Morrison Inn. Red Rocks, a great amphitheater here in Colorado to see concerts. Yeah. And we went up there, and with a napkin and a pen and a couple of beers, we penciled out what this thing was going to be. We came up with a name immediately, Garage Composites. And I had already had the Sam's Powersports Garage logo, which had the dog in the middle of it, right? And I said, we're going to put the dog in the middle of it. The perimeter of the logo are chairs at the table representing the 20 club experience, that all of us sitting in a table are stronger than any one of us.
That's right.
And so there it is. And so we said, let's get after it. And I remember sitting in my house, and I said, look, we got to get real clear on roles and responsibilities. Serge, this is going back to who's the brains of the company here.
Yeah, right.
And I said, we got to get real clear as to who's doing what, and I don't want to cross paths and step on your toes or whatever. And Tony jumps into the conversation. He's like, well, I want to be in control of all the people and all the product that we have out there. And I'm like, well, that's great, because I don't want to be in control of any of that. I said, sounds like you're the CEO. And he says, oh, okay, I'll be the CEO. I'm like, great. He said, what should we call you? And I'm like, whatever the hell you want to call me. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to give speeches. I'm going to get people excited about coming to do business with us. Then I'm going to hand that shit off to you, and I'm going to go back out on the road. That's what I'm going to do. So that's how it came to be. Tony has been the CEO from day one. He's taken his own 20. He's been in his own 20 clubs to learn how to be a better CEO. And quite frankly, he's been very good at learning and adapting through the years. He is the guy who's been pulling the levers. We talk about every decision prior to that lever getting pulled, but that's been me in the front of the house, if you will, and him in the back of the house, making sure that it's running right. He used to say, Sam wants to go to the moon all the time, and I have to figure out how to build the rocket, and so it's worked very well.
So awesome.
Now we have Serge. I don't know if you know. Now we have Jolene and Glow in school.
Yeah. I've met everybody, and now you just hired a newbie that we know that we share. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, Courtney. We brought Courtney on as well. I bring up, and Courtney's awesome. So is our whole team.
Courtney's awesome.
They're amazing, but I bring those up because they are partners. Glow, Jolene, and Schoolie are also partners now. Tony and I wanted to bring people up underneath us to start taking the load off of Tony, quite frankly, because he was hustling, doing a lot as the CEO, and so it's the transition has been working very well, and so we got a really core group of great people.
I've met everybody on your team, man. Everybody's top notch and very passionate about the industry and helping others. But I wanted to ask you, you say, show me your numbers and I'll show you your behavior.
Yes.
Break that down. And what does that actually mean inside of a dealership?
Yeah, well, a lot of dealers out there, they're trying to manage their store off a P&L, and it's very difficult to manage off a profit and loss statement or a general ledger because it's just the result. It's just this number over here that's the result. And so we try to move them into a composite because we are looking at leading indicators, not just lagging indicators. But that phrase comes from, with every number that you're looking at, there's a behavior that caused that number. And if you understand, there's a finite amount of behaviors that cause that number. And if the number's good, let's figure out what the behavior is and share it with everybody. So all of our clients and everybody in your 20 club get stronger collectively. And if the number's bad, let's figure out which is the behavior, which of the finite behaviors is behind it, and help you eradicate it and put the right behavior into place. I think we get overwhelmed by this. I have 6 rooftops and I have all these manufacturers and I have all this flooring costs and I have all of this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's a number and a behavior. So let's one by one go through it and fix the number by fixing the behavior. That's where it comes from.
Nice. All right. Treat the source, not the symptom.
Yeah.
All right. So when you walk into a dealership or sit with a group, what are the first numbers you look at to understand what's really going on?
Yeah, the first numbers they don't typically have, which are their transactional ratios. That's where that came from. So in 2008, I'm sitting in the room with Bill Marks and Matt Chiappetta. And Matt Chiappetta was a former general manager for a Harley store at Ride Now. And Bill Marks was the guy that analyzed all the data for Ride Now. And we're in Arizona at the Ride Now facility trying to figure out, how do we figure out the potential of a store? It's great that your store did X, but if your store could have done X times 2, well, maybe it's not so great. But so what's the high end? What's the high water mark of this? And that's where the transactional data came from. We now know that by tracking transactions, in other words, somebody gave us money for a good or a service in some department not called sales or F&I. That tells me how many people want to engage with your store. And as a ratio, I can tell you exactly how many units you should have delivered, be it motorcycles, in the Harley space, in the Powersports space, or boats, because they all have their different ratios. I can tell you exactly based off of your transactions for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, how many major units you should have delivered for that time period. So if they have that data, and they can pull that report fast, right? I know you don't have it, but can you pull me a transactional report for this last week? Yeah. And I can tell them how many major units they should have delivered. And historically, for dealers who have no idea about transactional data, that number comes in at about 63%, as in they think they're doing a great job, and my numbers say you got a 63% on your test.
Right.
So think about how many major units you're missing if you think you're an A+ and I tell you you're a D-, because I know from my history with school what D- looks like.
Right.
It's a long freaking way away from an A+, I can tell you that. So those would be the numbers I'd look at first. They look at how much money they made, and I'm like, I don't care what you did. I care what you could have done and missed.
Yes, exactly. Wisdom.
And
where are most dealerships misunderstanding their own performance.
With that mindset, they're looking at what they did historically. And so when I say, where do you think you'll be next year? Well, maybe we'll be 5% up over where we were last year. Well, where did that number come from? When they threw a dart at a dartboard, and that's where the number came from, as opposed to take data that we know to be true at this point. And if you match it up against what the store's capable of, and maybe you're only 60% of the way there now, let's get to 70% of the way there and make our way up to the potential of the store. And quite frankly, that's why our stores are some of the best performing stores in the country, because they know what the high water mark is and they can chase it.
In your opinion, in your experience, I mean, you've sat down with so many, you've helped so many different dealerships. What separates the dealers that win consistently from the ones that are always struggling or blaming the market?
Ed used to say he'd say a bad composite review is when we're talking about your people. A good composite review is when we're talking about your systems. And a great composite review is when your people and your systems are doing what they should be doing, and we get to talk about new thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so what most dealers talk about are their people. Oh, Chad and F&I is really struggling, and Cindy in the parts department hasn't put that policy in place. We can't be talking about your people or your systems. We have to have the systems that we know work installed by leaders who say this is the way we will be doing it. And that frees us up to talk about the new thinking, about the next event we're going to have, et cetera. It is awesome to see people come in with hesitancy and like, I don't know. I don't want to share my numbers with all these people and share my secret sauce, because there's no secret sauce.
Well, there just isn't,
right? And then they start
especially nowadays.
They start implementing these fundamental principles. I can't tell you, it shocks me to think about in an industry where only 3% of the population play in the space. That's Powersports. Only 3% of the population play in the Powersports industry. That the lead is so valuable, yet nobody, few people outside of the dealers we work with, it seems to be, have any iteration of a traffic log or a CRM. They don't track the number of opportunities they have and get the information to follow up with the customers. They just do the best we can and they move on to the next person. I'm just like, you're burning leads. And you had a guy on, what was it, yesterday or the day before, and he was talking about the industry and kind of it's going to fizzle out to nothing. I think he talked about archery as a reference point, that, archery came in and it was exciting. Otherwise it'd be that dirty building at the end of the strip mall or something like that.
Right.
And he was talking about how many people, we better put more people in the top of the funnel. And I would absolutely agree that we better put more people in the top of the funnel. But the amount of headroom in the average dealership to convert more people today will fill that funnel for years to come, independent of the new riders that come in. There's so much opportunity in the business that's already there. And all these dealers are looking, I mean, the digital craze is nuts right now. Every employee, right? They think that like, I got to check all these boxes and then I got to have this inventory reposting app and then we got to have AI do all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, or you could just have a great time with the next dude who walks in the door. You right. That, right?
That's awesome, bro.
and the answer is obviously both, right? We want to play in both of those spaces, but we are getting so far away from relationship selling and getting into what I call
nuts.
Right, I call it transactional clerking.
Nuts.
Relationship selling is having a great relationship with people. Transactional clerking to me is everything that all of these apps and digital platforms, which I agree with and I like them, but they're all pushing towards make it so easy that they just click the button. And eventually a lot of this is going to go online. We have to be playing.
Our industry. This is not how this industry is.
It's a different industry.
It's a different industry.
Every one of those software systems, in my opinion, is a great tool to redirect an opportunity for engagement on a personal level. It's not to take over the opportunity for engagement on a personal level, right? And I think when you look at those as polar opposites, relationship selling versus transactional clerking, you see they're very different. Now, we need the low margin transactions just as much as we need the high volume relationship selling. We typically have a much higher volume, right? Because those two offset each other. We don't want to flatline like in the medical community. We want to have some good deals and some low margin deals and get as many people in as we can. But if you only play in the low margin space, you don't have the high margin stuff to offset it. And you're going to find yourself out of business pretty damn quickly.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a major, I went off the handle there because I'm very passionate about this. And Serge, you saw the first iteration of this conversation at the NPDA when I gave that speech about what game are you playing, right?
Mhm.
But I just think it's something a lot of dealers need to look at. All of the answers are not in the digital space.
The
The
focus is
longe-
getting away from reality, in my opinion. Like I'm right now with Cycles Worldwide, we are building an umbrella to help the dealers, right? So
Yes.
I came from a more independent store where I owned, and so I always thought independent. Now I'm looking at it, and everybody's just posting AI this, AI that, AI this, AI that, and there is so much focus being put to something that is a help, but not the need for the industry. And that's what I think what's driving people away. It's like we are the only true industry. And when I say power sports, boats is the same way and everything else, ATVs, that it's just, wow. You look at something, you see a bike online, you're like, my God, I'm in love. You don't do that, very seldom with cars are more needs unless it's you got the money to buy something insane. But like, get back to the people, man. Get them in your store. Get them, put your arm around them. Say, hey, take a look at this. I think you might like this. This is kind of cool.
Yeah. So follow me on this here. I had mentioned to you that psychology was something I got very much into, and it happened after we bought the company from Ed Lemko. Because what I did not want to be was a mini Ed Lemko just espousing what Ed said. Well, Ed said, and then Ed said, and then Ed said. I want to honor Ed because he said some pretty amazing stuff, including some pretty funny stuff. The Lemko-isms, like, oh, you moving your sales guy that didn't work in the sales department to service writers, kind of like rotating a bald tire. And he'd look at you. He'd just look at you. Right? There's a million of those quotes that are out there, and I love those. But I needed to have my own angle to the business after I took it from Ed. And that's when I went deep, deep down the rabbit hole into psychology, because I was fascinated by one question. Why is it that everybody has a laundry list of why? Here's a million reasons why buying a motorcycle is a terrible decision, but we still do it.
Yeah.
How is it that there are 2 days in the boat owner's life, the day they buy it and the day they sell it, that are supposed to be the best days of a boat owner's life? That's a terrible statement that's out there, right? Who would ever buy one of these toys if they were so dangerous and so expensive? What is it that drives us? And if you can get to the driver underneath it, the picture, the idea that guy has, that the guy buying the yacht wants to take it to be seen at the yacht club. It has nothing to do with the boat he buys. It has everything to do with being seen at the yacht club because his dad or his mom told him he'd never be anything, or whatever his story is. It doesn't make any difference. Or the fact that I want to drag a knee at Laguna Seca around a turn, or the fact that I got obsessed with motorcycles through Top Gun. And if you tell me that story and you have if you have one of the old GPZs or the new H2, I'm probably going to buy it from you. I've already done it. But it's the psychology that's behind it all, right? And until we get to that, all of these digital things, including AI, specifically AI, they are logical solutions for what is perceived to be a logical problem. And there's nothing logical about these two industries. Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero things logical about owning a motorcycle. It's all experience and enjoyment and fulfilling a dream. And until you get that dream, it's just a transaction that you're hoping I click a button and it's going to be a race to the bottom.
100%.
Definitely. Solid points, man. So it sounds like so many dealers are still reactive rather than proactive. Where are those dealers leaving the most money on the table right now?
Well, I would suggest to you in the power sports industry, it's going to be transactions. In the transactional ratio says you're missing a tremendous amount of major units. For instance, the idea is to get in front of a customer's turn cycle. Ben, so if you bring your motorcycle into the service bay, I, as a sales guy, want to be back there chatting you up about how cool your motorcycle is. Because, hey, do you ever think about trading it? By the way, have you seen the new one on the floor? Let me show it to you. You're here anyways. I'm going to get in front of the decision you've made to trade it in and get you excited about the thing that's on the floor. That is one example of how paying attention to transactions can yield you a sale that you wouldn't have had normally. So I think it's the amount of available units that we could be selling to existing customers already, the transactional space. And if we talk about the marine industry, and I know you guys aren't marine oriented, but it's the only other industry we play in because I grew up on boats and it's a passion of ours. It's F&I. They don't understand why they can't just outsource the F&I. And my question is always, do you understand how the outsourced F&I's companies make money? It's because you outsource your F&I. There's that much money that you're walking away from.
I know.
That we could be capturing ourselves. So I think it's, and then you can't just write a memo and say, oh, chase more units in the power sports industry.
Right.
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 But it's what allows us to chase more units, and it's slowing down the sale, creating experiences, and having amazing time with people. All the data's out there anyhow. Just have a great time with them. Joe Girard, Guinness Book of World Record for the most amount of cars ever sold, 13,004, I believe the number was, over a 15-year career. So think about that for a second. If you run the math on that and a couple of days off, it's like 82 cars a month. And I know we're talking about cars here, but this is the guy that literally wrote the book. And by the way, the guy who's in second place on the Guinness Book of World Records is his son, which tells you it's repeatable performance. It's repeatable if you understand how he's doing it. And his whole book about how to do it can be boiled down to 2 bullet points. Have a great time with people so you have enough content to ruthlessly follow up with them, and they will buy from you eventually because they already want the thing. It's so simple, and we don't do it. We drop leads. We don't follow up with them, maybe once, maybe twice, but we don't even have the connection to even know what to follow up with them about. It all goes back to the engagement with the customer.
All right. Well, that's cool. We're going to kind of get into the training, the culture, and the people now. You build platforms like Wheelhouse College and Sam's Powersports Garage. Before I get into my question, please explain to us what each business does.
Okay. You want to know who the brains in the operation happens to be? It's my wife. I didn't build either one of those. Okay.
Okay,
she
cool.
did, because in 2011, she said, Sam, and this was before Tony and I rebooted Garage Composites, which was April of 2015. This was when Tony and I were on the road doing our own thing. And my wife's like, you're on the road all the time. Why don't we just film you in whatever you do on the road? Let's just create a little mini studio and film that training and put it online and have an online little academy, and people can subscribe to it. And I'll run that whole thing. I just need you to stand in front of the camera and do what you do on the road, which, you know, basically she said, cameras on, dance, monkey, go. Do something.
Hey, you did work at the circus. I mean,
I did. And so now we have, I call them channels, right? And she calls them products. I call them channels. So if you think Sam's Powersports Garage was the first thing we built for the motorcycle industry, it's online training for the motorcycle industry. And it is a channel inside of what is now called Wheelhouse College. That is the overarching umbrella of where this training lives. So we have a channel for the power sports industry. We have a channel for the marine industry. We have a channel for Polaris Australia. It has its own channel inside. Wow. We have a channel for Nautique boats. We have a channel for Polaris Indian North America, right? So it's got these different verticals inside of this thing that's now called Wheelhouse College. That was 100% my wife's doing. But in its simplest form, it's online training for your staff for this industry. That's what it is.
Why, in your opinion, because you get a chance to do this every single day of your life, why is training still such a massive gap in the industry?
First of all, I love that you said I get to do this, because that is a core principle inside of our company. I get to get on a plane. I get to go do this training. I'm so unbelievably fortunate to work in an industry that I'm clearly obsessed with. I think, Serge, I've had like 117 motorcycles roll through my garage, man. I can't have like. But the training aspect of it, by the way, the converse of get to is got to. Like, oh, I got to go pick up my kid. And we say that casually. And no, you get to go pick up your kid. What a privilege to go pick up your kid at school. It's a shift in mindset that we try to teach everybody on our team. And it's a core principle that we have. So anyhow, just you touched on that. But the training is the one thing that people treat training like a checklist item. Like it's an onboarding process. Like, okay, I showed you where the bathrooms are. Here are your uniforms. Here's your operations manual. And then you took that one video for 45 minutes, right? Okay, you're trained now. And then it's like you think of any other industry and think of like the legal industry or the real estate industry. It's ongoing, required, mandatory training. Think of any sports you've ever seen. Can you imagine doing it once? Imagine shooting one left-handed free throw and then being like, no, I'm good. I'll just shoot left-handed all day today. I did it. You checked me out on the left-handed free throw. And nobody wants to play that game. That's not why dealers got in the business. Our dealers got in the business because they love motorcycles and they want to play with them. And if they can have something that funds them playing in the motorcycle industry, cool. And I'm going to do that. But wow, we have bombarded dealers with a lot of things that they didn't get into the industry for. Some of them from day one, training. Yeah. Some of them new AI, right? All of this stuff. I remember in 2002, we're trying to tell dealers, no, you should cancel your Yellow Pages subscription. You don't need it anymore. Yes, you do need a website eventually, and they hate all of it because not why they got in the industry. They just want the door to swing open, have a great time, and make enough money to keep playing. That's all they want to do. So training is a difficult one. It's funny because people, Tony and I have heard the phrase, those who can't do train, right? You've heard this phrase before. And it pisses us off. And it used to piss me off. And now I'm just like, well, those who can't, look, public speaking is the number one fear in America and it has been since I've been alive. So I say, well, if you can't train, then you got to do. Those who can't train do, right? I just flip it around on people, right? But the training is intimidating for people and they don't like it and it's hard work. So that's why it doesn't get done. So if you have somebody on your team who's a good trainer, promote them into being a trainer. But a lot of dealerships also don't want the expense of having a full-time person on staff as a trainer because there's turnover in retail industries across the world. They're transient industries, typically retail. So we got to go through this again and again and again and again. And that's why the training is always a necessity. And quite frankly, when Mark Tack and I were talking about buying the company from Ed Lemko in 2004, I said, Mark, do you think I'm is this just a crazy gamble? And he said, Sam, do you think there'll be motorcycles around for the next lifetime? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can't imagine them ever going anywhere. He says, do you think dealers will need training during that time frame? I'm like, yeah, good point. Let's do it.
Yeah, nice.
It was simple.
It's good. It's good when you got somebody like that in your corner, man.
Yeah. Great
So
guy.
to continue on the people train, do you think dealers invest enough in their people, broadly speaking, or do they expect performance without development?
Yes.
Yeah.
100 A, D, all the above, right? Like,
yeah.
They expect. It's funny. I was listening to Neil Noble's thing, and you asked him about what was it, boardroom or sales floor or something like that, and he said, "Yes, that's exactly where I need to be." But it's the same thing. Like, do they expect that what I'm paying you should come to the table with some skill? Yeah, because a lot of people should be having more skills for the position they have. But then again, if they've never been trained in it, the dealer has an obligation to make sure we get them up to speed, which is why all of our academies exist and our dealership training exists. So I do think that there is an expectation from the dealer that they should be able to do the job. But I would just remind everybody out there that so much of training is do it again, do it again, do it again. You know, just like in sports, just like everything out there. You sit here and
repetition makes better, man. Just the reality of life.
That's it. And so the answer to the first question is no, they don't spend enough in training, which is easy for a guy who has training for sale at a consulting company. But we've always said, look, man, if you don't get training from us, just go get it somewhere, because like you guys, I just want the industry to be kicking ass for the rest of my life and the rest of my kid's life, because she's on motorcycle number 2 already.
Nice.
So I don't care where you get it from. Hopefully you see enough value to come at least check us out first, but just get training so the customers coming in the door have a great experience. It's bad enough when all their friends are telling them there are 99 reasons why to not own a motorcycle. Then they come in the store and get ignored. Now you just gave them the 100th reason and you never see them again and they leave. So we've got to do a better job in the store.
Love that analogy you just said right there. That's so heads on.
Sorry, Serge.
Sorry.
You also talk a lot about behavior. So how much of success is systems versus people versus leadership?
No, it's a great question. This usually comes up when we see really high performing F&I departments. And we get into, is that process or talent? And where does process stop and where does talent take over? And it seems like with the high watermarks and the high scores, I don't care if we're talking about F&I per unit sold or service writer and their ability to sell as a service writer instead of just ring people up and be reactive, there is a number that you can hit with process. And it is typically considerably above where the national average in the country is. And then there's the top 10% in the country. So I think you absolutely need both. You need the talent, but you need the process first. I should be able to train somebody to get to that, let's call it 70% of what, 20 points over where the country is. If the country plays at 50% of what's possible, my process should be able to get you to 70% of that number, whichever number we're looking at. But then talent lays in over the top, which is why you have some people that can play at, $3,000 a click in F&I per unit sold in the Harley space. And we got guys at 1,700 per unit in the metric space. And that's all in, that's not per finance. So the little 50cc dirt bikes, that goes into a 1,700 per unit sold number in the F&I department, right? Because they're that good. The talent lays over the very good process in the first place. So I believe you have to have both. And I believe they're independent of each other.
I mean, you've been in the industry for decades now. how has it changed for the better or for worse? And here's where I'm going with this. Are dealers more informed today or just overwhelmed? And what are you seeing right now that concerns you about the future of dealerships? Because you're in this game so deep.
Well, they're both. They are more informed and they're more overwhelmed. I go back to there's so many things that they didn't get into business to have to think about, like the new FTC thing that just got passed and the tariff issue that's been coming down the line.
Yeah, that FTC, I listened to your guys' podcast. That was awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. We were, talk about two guys not capable of speaking to the granular pieces of the data, but we've got a guy that we're actually interviewing next, who's he's the president of the Colorado Auto Dealer Association. He's going to lay out exactly what that means, and we got him coming on Friday.
Nice.
But thank you for that compliment. I just think that there's so much stuff that the dealer now has to pay attention to that they never had to worry about when they started this company, and so there are all these little offshoots of it. And you ask what is better or worse than what it was before. I have a hard time with the consolidation. I'm not saying look, Serge, you and I were talking about college football. And I was telling you, like, with the the portal and the name, image, and likeness. And for those of us who grew up with college football and love college football, the industry or the game is very different today than it ever was. Certainly when Bobby Bowden played when I was at Florida State, but when he was coaching, it's so different. Nick Saban left as a coach because it was so different, right? It doesn't make it bad because as a viewer, I sure loved seeing Indiana make a run. And I sure loved them watching Miami because I cheer for anybody not named the Miami Hurricane. So I love that. I loved it. It's a great product today. And I would suggest to you, there's in the consolidation and with the auto guys crossing over into Powersports, there are a lot of things they bring that make it a better experience. It's a better dealership. It's cleaner. There are customer lounges. We can hire better technicians for working on these high-tech motorcycles. I mean, very few of us can wrench on our own bikes these days with all the technology that's built into the bikes. And so I think they bring a lot to the table, but then they also bring us a sterility, if you will. A lot of these places are sterile. They look just like the last place. And you probably have, you guys probably both have a shop that you go to that's not a corporate designed motorcycle store. It's just a shop and it's awesome. And you want to hang out there all day long. So I think that's the detractor as well. A lot of the mom and pop shops are getting pushed out by the corporate guys that are out there. And again, it's just a different experience that they come to the table with. I think the legalities of what's going on, and then I look at the profitability, particularly of small volume stores. Do they have the dollars to play in the AI space? Do they have the dollars to adjust to what the FTC is trying to push us to, what we're allowed to advertise and how we're allowed to advertise pricing, which is radically different than the way we've done it for years. If I have to put every fee and every cost and everything into the advertised price, the price now looks considerably higher to somebody who was thinking, well, I was going to get a motorcycle and I'm not even shopping between dealers, but now the price on that little 500cc is so high, I can't even play that game, as opposed to getting them in the store and finding a creative way, either with a pre-owned or with a finance program, to get them on a new motorcycle. So I just think there's a lot coming at dealers that they're being forced to focus on that's changing the environment. And if we can keep some semblance of what it means to have that shop and that feel that you walk into, and it's almost like, if you remember the old TV show Cheers, when Norm walks in,
Norm,
that's what we all want at our local motorcycle shop. And sometimes with turnover and regulations and all this kind of stuff, it becomes sterile and we lose some of that. So very long-winded answer, but hopefully
great answer.
So when dealers bring you in, what are they usually asking you for, and what do they usually actually need?
Well, it's funny. Schoolie and I just did a podcast. It just came out a couple days ago because Schoolie has really replaced me as the guy going in-house to do all this work. I do a lot more stuff with OEMs and big dealer groups than I do with a dealer, quote, bringing me in. A dealer will bring in one of our trainers, and we have several of them in all different departments, and they think they need help with closing. And the reality is they need help with opening. They don't need help. They want a tricky, fancy closing, cheesy sales guy line, and we got to get better at closing. I'm like, well, the best close in the world is be a better opener. Have a great time with somebody so they want to do what they came in here to do anyhow. Just get out of their way and let them, and have them do it with you because they're having a great time with you. So I think a lot of people want the instant answer as opposed to just have a better experience with people. Make sure they get the opportunity to meet the staff and see every department, and they'll add on to their own sale. A lot of them, Ben, to answer your question, if there's one thing I had to hang our hat on, we're very good at a sales process, and a lot of stores just have no sales process. Sirs, you probably remember it in PDA when I asked almost 100 people at a marine boat show training, what is step 3 of your sales process? Put your hand in the air if you can tell me step 3 of your sales process, and 0 hands went up with 100 people. Well, I think it was 92 people that were in the room. Just shocks me. So bringing a structured sales process, a repeatable performance that they can follow into the dealerships, that happens. And then the first part of my answer was, and it starts with the greet. Spend more time in the greet. It's the most important step, and it's the one that every sales guy wants to get past.
Yeah, and that's where the chaos actually happens, is there's no structure, man. So if there's no structure, how can you properly train anybody to do it, to follow a system, to do it right? Right. So you got people coming in, the doors swinging open. You got turnover because these new guys are getting blamed for shit that they're not bringing in, and they're not bringing it in because they don't know how to close it the right way, because they don't know what the full structure of the store is. So it's like, in my opinion, it always starts from the top. I think it's so important, listening to you, your team, and the things that you guys bring out. I think more dealerships who are in that one leg on one side of the fence, one leg on the other side of the fence, need to call company like Garage Composites, bring you guys in, get that structure set up, because I mean, I've seen it, and I've talked to dealers who were those people sitting on that fence that had you guys in, and they said when you left, everything changed for the better. So, I mean, you guys are doing an amazing job to help. I think more people need to utilize your services.
Well, I appreciate that. And we'll tell people all the time, we're like, look, let me give you a copy of our national averages of what the average dealer inside of our family is doing, and then have a 20-minute phone call with one of my guys and have him walk through what you're looking at so that you can compare your own numbers to that and go, hey, we're right there where your national average is. And to which case I'd say, take a look at our top 10. Now, don't just look at our average, look at our top 10 after that, right?
Right.
So use a tool that you can benchmark from. And then when people, to your point there about Serge getting caught up in the swirl of it all, is what Ed Lemko used to call it. Dealers have all the best intentions. They walk into the retail store, unlock the door, and the swirl happens, right? And they just get caught in this retail swirl and they can't get out of it. I always think about 2 dogs at a dog park. So the dog in the logo is an artist rendition of my bulldog. And I said, one day when I start a company, that dog will be the centerpiece of the logo. And now,
is he still alive?
No, he passed away years ago. Is an American bulldog named Junior, which is why my personal company is called Junior Inc. But he's the man, and he's in the logo. He's in 4 different company logos right now, just because he's awesome. And if you start talking to me about bulldogs, we'll talk all day long about bulldogs. So I tell people, I'm like, in the greet, all you need to do is land on one thing that you have in common with somebody, and it's off to the races, and stay there until they take you to the widget. Let them take you to the motorcycle, not you saying what brings you in the door today. We actually have a dealership. One of our clients, it's a terminable offense to ask what brings you in the store today on the showroom floor. Sales guys will get fired if they ask the question, because that's about the it and not about the person, right? And then I'll give you one more visual, and then I'll stop on this one, which is dogs at a dog park. If you've ever been to a dog park, an off-leash dog park, and you see dogs, they come in, they're all bowed up, like, what's going on? I'm ready to kick everybody's ass in here, right? And then, who's this person, right? They start going in circles around each other. Then they start smelling each other's ass. And then all of a sudden they're best friends, right? They just spent a little time getting uncomfortable, and now they're best friends. And then they're running all day long at the dog park, and they see that dog at the next week when they're at the dog. This is your customer. This is your sales process. Stay in the greet. Get a little uncomfortable and have a great time with this person. And then you're off to the races. Then you got a customer for life, and they ask for you by name, and you're there. I got a guy or I got a gal in the industry because you just spent the time on the front end of the sale, not worrying about the clothes on the back end of the sale.
And he's not telling anybody to smell the customer's ass. That was just an example.
Yeah. I love that was your takeaway, though. That's good. I love that's where you went.
Sam, what is the hardest truth you've had to tell a dealer or leadership team? And I imagine it's probably happened multiple times.
When the GM or the owner is not the one who should be leading the ship.
Oh, yeah.
when he or she brings us in to train their staff, and it's not their staff that needs the training. It's the inability to do business differently than they've ever known before from the top down, not from the bottom up. Yeah, which is a tough pill to swallow.
Nice. I can imagine. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Everything starts from the top and trickles down. So, I mean, that's how everything goes. Where do you see the power sports industry heading in the next 5 years from your experiences on being in the trenches?
Yeah, I think we have, UTVs have made such a huge impact in sales. And for your listener who doesn't know UTV, it's just a side-by-side, right? Whether 2-seater, 4-seater, whatever it happens to be. And let me just take 1 minute and go back and say, in 2006, when Polaris came out with the first 4-seater side-by-side, 50% of deposits were from Harley riders.
Really?
50% were Harley riders, right? And again, looking at the psychology of it, why would that be? And the answer is they're trading in selfish for family. That's why boats sell so well, because it's families.
Yeah.
So trading in selfish for family, right? So I think to answer your question, things that involve a more social dynamic with motorcycling, which is not necessarily how I like to ride. I told you guys I like to do stuff typically alone. But look at all the adventure motorcycles and the back road discovery routes that have been put out there. And now you have tour companies that take people on the back road discovery routes. It's a group of 10 to 15 people, and they go hang out together and they spend time together. I think you're going to see more of that instead of just buy a toy and off you go. So whether that's riding parks that are out there or BDRs or whatever it happens to be, I think that's a good place for the industry to be, because you look at we played in the bicycle industry. Tony and I went after the bicycle industry for 3 years. There's just not enough revenue for consulting companies to play in the bicycle industry. There's not enough profit in those bikes that are out there, but we did play in the space. And one of the number one complaints about why people didn't buy a bike, they don't know where to go to ride. So again, right, it's just an opportunity of, you just sold them a toy and off you go, or you could be involved in their life. This is why Harley, part of the reason Harley has been Harley and has had the Harley market share for as long as they have, because when you buy a Harley, you immediately get a family that goes with that. And you immediately get people to ride with, and everybody goes together to Sturgis.
Join the hog network, and we get, I know, it's true. And that's why a lot of people, I specialized in one owner under 5,000 mile bikes, Harleys, and I bought a lot of low mileage motorcycles. And talking to most of the people that I buy the bikes from, there was the number one complaint. It was just like, I bought it on a whim and I thought it would change things. And then I didn't have anybody to ride with. And then I just kind of started sitting in the garage. And that's where it goes. If you don't have that, if you're not just passionate and you grow up with this and you can just be by yourself, like you and I love riding by myself a lot of times. So, but like, we're going to have the Supercross in town this weekend, right? And I'm going to go see a Supercross with Zach Blazek, who's the national sales manager for KTM. And he's the guy that took me 3 years ago to my first Supercross. I didn't grow up with dirt bikes. I grew up with a street bike. I never had an opportunity to get in a dirt bike riding. And you go to one of those things, you would never know that we have a problem getting new people to ride motorcycles. There are kids everywhere. There are kids that are sponsored by OEMs everywhere. And then I went to a GNCC race, which was outside of Indianapolis, which is just this mayhem of an off-road with heats of different age groups and everything. There were thousands of families in RVs and campers taking up just hundreds of acres of space. And they all ride electric motorcycles to get to where their motorcycle is ready so that they can go ride the course, get on their electric bicycle, and go back to their RVs. And an electric bicycle is by definition a motorcycle, and it hasn't had the transfer of riders like we thought it would. But I still think that piece is coming. So I don't agree with the people who say, oh, we're in jeopardy of never having riders in our industry anymore. Go to any one of these events and you'll walk away going, that is just not true. We're in jeopardy of not being able to convert them because we keep playing in the transactional space, not the relational space, right? But that little kid wants to come in and join the races. He's ready to buy today. He's got to convince his dad that we're the place and this is the time. Yeah.
Right.
It's killer.
Yeah. Hey, so for people listening, dealers, managers, decision makers, average Joes, the smaller mom and pop guys, why should they bring Garage Composites in to help them, and what results can they expect if they follow your guidelines, your recommendations, your training, you name it?
Everything we stand for is that we want to do two things simultaneously. I want to increase your profitability while simultaneously increasing your CSI scores. I do not want to do one without doing the other. I can't get a bunch of money in your pocket 1 year while your CSI scores tank, because nobody will come back and do business with you. I have to do both. And by I have to do both, you, the dealer, has to do both. I can show you the blueprint if you're willing to go to work and understand how to get to both of those places. How do we increase profitability? Turning every department into a sales department. This isn't a parts department. It's a sales department that happens to sell parts. This isn't a service department. It's a sales department that happens to sell time and labor. If you understand that every department is a sales department and that people want to spend money on their toys, not all their other stuff. They don't want to spend money fixing the dishwasher, but to put that new thing on my bike, oh, I'll do that all day long, right? We turn them into sales departments and they love you for it, and we have high CSI scores on the backside of it. So they should bring us in if those two things are important to them and they want to go to another level.
That makes sense. So where can people follow you? Where are you most active on social media? How do we connect with Garage Composites? And what else do you guys have going on right now? Anything fun you want to plug?
Yeah, thanks for that. You can find everything we do at garagecomposites.com. That's the easiest place to get everything we do, garagecomposites.com. If you're interested in any of that online training that I mentioned under the umbrella of Wheelhouse College, it is just wheelhouse.college. So wheelhouse.college. You can find all that kind of stuff. And you can take a free test drive on the training if that's of interest to you guys. Social media, we're on all the platforms out there, the Instagram and the Facebook and all the crap that I don't know about. I'm of that generation where I just don't care. The only things I post are like when we have 30 elk in our yard, and I'll post a picture of a sunrise and the elk, and I'll just say love Colorado, because I just love Colorado. But you can find us all individually or as a company. We're on all the social media platforms. It's just garagecomposites.com. So take a look for it. And thanks for the opportunity. We just got done with a closing seminar, a closing workshop last week that we ran, and we hadn't run it since 2019. COVID hit. We just never got back to it. We're like, we're putting it back on the books. And so we had 30 different sales managers come in and go through the closing workshop. But I think we had as much fun as there was training. We were laughing as a group the entire damn time. We had a great time with that, and we got some great reviews off of that. Cool. So we'll be doing that again in the fall, probably do one on each side of the selling season.
And where do you advertise that? Is that always advertised through the Garage Composites social media platforms? You send it out early enough where these GMs can hook up with you guys?
We do all of our stuff, all of our management academies, whatever it is. Those management academies run every year. Typically, the general manager class starts in February, so we have year-end data that we're looking at from the previous year, and it ends the next February, so we can see what they've done over the course of a year. And the sales manager, parts manager, service manager, that all happens in the fall time. So that's coming up here in a little bit. But yes, it's all sent to our clients in advance, and then it's all blasted through social media in advance as well.
Sam, I wanted to ask you one last question before we sign off. With the Courtney hire, is this something new that the company is adding on as part of their service?
100%.
Can you explain a little bit what Courtney's role is, and explain what that is for dealers who may have some interest in this?
Yeah, Courtney is going to be in charge of acquisitions for us. There are a lot of dealerships that trade hands out there, and it can be a very convoluted process, or you can have somebody who's a professional who can make it very easy for you. So Courtney is going to be that for us. So we will work on behalf of the buyer and the seller to put a deal together that makes sense, and then we will take a percentage of the selling price off of that for Garage Composites, for her primarily because she's working for us. We're always looking for opportunities like, where is an avenue that we can play? And one of the ones that I explored for years that it's a direct conflict of interest, but a staffing company. If we had you know how many managers that roll through our company that end up somewhere else, and we could be placing managers all over the country. But then again, the best managers I know work for our clients, and I'm not going to pull them from a client to place them somewhere else. Yeah. Right. So those kinds of projects that we think through, some of those have to get tabled, but this is one that we've been talking with Courtney for a while now. We're super happy to have her on board. Yeah. And you can find her on our website, garagecomposites.com. You can email her straight from the website for anyone who's interested. And our mastermind groups is another thing. Ozzy Giglio and Dave Collier, both from the Harley Davidson space. If you recognize those those
do.
names. Those guys have done a lot with Harley Davidson, both in on the retail side of the fence, and Dave was with Harley corporate for a while. Ozzy had many stores, and through selling those stores and through, do we buy the land? Do we rent the land? Do we have the building on that land? Do we, triple net leases, all that kind of stuff, the wealth creation that a lot of our dealers are looking for. And then quite frankly, if we sell it, how are we going to sell it? What does the structure look like? Like, for instance, when Tack and Coulter and I bought Lemko, I had a personal note with Tack and Coulter, and I was immediately a 24% owner, so that every pay period I got a check for 24% because I was an immediate owner, but 100% of that went back to that personal note until it was paid off. And that's just a strategy that seemed to make sense that we worked through, and they've done with a lot of their GMs. And there are a lot of those strategies depending on what people want to do, whether they want to sell their business or transition it to their staff or whatever that happens to be. So now we have this thing called Premier Services. Mastermind is part of that. Courtney and the acquisition team will be part of that. So there's a whole new division, if you will, that we're trying to be more of an resource and an asset for our dealers that are out there. So thank you for asking.
Yeah. Love watching the growth of the company. Love all your team members, every single one of them, top notch. I've got a chance to get to know you and Tony, more on a personal level. And so it's been a lot of fun. Courtney too. So, man, we could have you on for the next 3 hours, dude. Obviously, we want to make sure that you get back to business. Appreciate you taking the time to join us here, man. Been awesome to hear the journey, and your knowledge is just off the charts. And what you guys are doing is exactly what this industry needs. It needs somebody to point them back into the right direction on how to do business the right way. So continued success with everything you guys do going forward.
Buddy, I appreciate that very much. What you guys are doing is very different, and I applaud your efforts tremendously. Trying, with One Gang Worldwide. I mean, it's just like, I would encourage you, and I hope you plug it on your podcast, that how people find you guys and what you're doing, and having a marketplace where everybody can post to it. And it's just bringing the industry together, right? Putting the cohesiveness out there and helping everybody out, which is a lot of what we do. So thank you too very much for what you do.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, man. We're going to keep plugging, man. Ready to run through a wall after that.
That's right.
Oh, dude.
Thank you, brother.
All right,
awesome like that. All right.
Thank
See
you,
you,
brother.
brother.
We'll take care.
Rock on. See you, man.
Bye-bye.